Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about the new Methyl Ethel album, Triage. Methyl Ethel is a Perth, Australia-based art rock band. Now, I got hip to these guys a couple of years ago when I saw them open up for the OCs of all bands. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't too wowed. I thought the aesthetic was there, but at the time, I was just not into the vocals, not into the instrumentals. I thought that they had a good idea, but just not coming through with it. And I honestly had a lot of the same feelings on their 2016 debut, Oh Inhuman Spectacle. I honestly could barely get through this album without falling asleep. But on their next album, they honestly turned up the notch in a big way. There were more compelling performances, the grooves were heavy and seriously funky. And tracks like Ubu were just genuinely great. And I actually got pretty excited coming into this album because I thought a lot of the singles were really good. So without further ado, let's chat about this new album. This album starts off with Ruiner, and honestly I don't think it's that bad of an intro. I like the very icy synths and the upbeat funk. Like, take this compared to where they were a few years ago, they've turned around completely. I actually dig the very haunting vibe to this, as well as frontman Jake Webb's very soulful performance. No, for a sort of weird psychedelic indie pop tune, this is actually a great start. I also love just how much of a genuine throwback some of these synths are. No, I'm honestly all for this, and the layers and layers of harmonies are a really great choice too. All the elements a few tracks later has some really great elements to it, no pun intended. It's still very chilly, it's very minimal, certainly has a throwback vibe to it, but the more slow-burning vibe to this is certainly fascinating. Honestly, it doesn't even sound like it belongs on this album. It's whimsical, it's catchy, and honestly, it's just kind of interesting to hear Methyl Ethel go for this sort of airier, lighter sound. Just a very classy, sunny indie pop tune. I don't mind it at all. And not for nothing, Real Tight is just an absolutely gold synth pop tune. In a way here, I get a little bit of a dark vibe that I got on MGMT's Little Dark Age last year. There are still tons of grooves and funk, and Jake's performance is still very soulful. Honestly, I don't really have anything bad to say about this track. Just a genuinely freaky and weird indie pop tune with some great songwriting. Not to mention, it just mixes things up just enough on this album. And that repeated line of I measured once and cut twice, that is a great line. But honestly, going through this album, I feel like I have a lot of the same things to say on each track to the point where it sort of becomes a little bit of an issue towards the end. Take example Scream Hole. I literally feel like this is almost a carbon copy of this album's intro. There are very chilly synths, and I honestly feel like this is almost like a novelty tune at times. And honestly, at first, I really dug this track, but the more I listen to this album, this track has actually lessened on me just because of how much it sounds like everything else here. I mean, it's still a very haunting, chilly indie pop tune, but even Jake's performance here isn't that special. He sounds so rigid on this track, and I don't think that's intentional. But then we get moments like hip horror where I'm honestly asking myself, like, what the hell am I listening to? There are times on here where these tracks sort of come off like novelty 80s hits, but like in a fun way, but this track is just a damn parody. It's just so goofy, and Jake's performance here is just so stiff and off completely. I just can't take anything about this track seriously. The instrumentals, the performance is nothing. And worst of all, in moments like this, it just brings out just how one-dimensional this album really is. I have a lot of the same problems with Trip the Mains. This one, on the other hand, is a very upbeat, synth-driven tune, and at first, I was really into it. But the thing is with tracks like this is I can't tell you the difference between this and some of the singles here. It's a shame because Jake actually sounds really awesome. But instrumentally, there's nothing about this track that we haven't seen in the last few. It's not a terrible track. All the pieces are here. The synths are great. But you know what? It's just the way that they've been put together that I feel like they've all been recycled. We do get moments like Post Blue, which really, truly shock me and come out with some legitimately exciting stuff. This one, for example, is just a very slow, haunting tune that practically has a little Radiohead influence in there. There are no grooves in sight, no funk in sight. For a few minutes, Methyl Ethel just do a really great job of building an atmosphere. Jake's performance here is absolutely freakish. Like, I honestly didn't really expect to hear a track like this here, but it's actually the sort of mesmerizing, ghoulish ballad that I didn't, know that I needed right about now. As a matter of fact, I'd love hearing more tracks like this. And it's really just fascinating to see what happens when Methyl Ethel really take their time with a track. But sadly, this band just really fall off the rails with its final two tracks. What About the 37 is literally by far the worst track of the bunch. I'm down with the ballad and all. They've proven that they could do that, but this is pathetic. This track has zero emotion, zero passion, zero anything. However, I do actually really love the chorus here. Like I said, the pieces are all here. I just feel like they're putting them together completely the wrong way at times. And honestly, I have a lot of the same feelings on No Fighting, this album's closer. It's just another slow burner, but like on this one, almost nothing happens. Jake does end up sounding really emotional here, probably more emotional than he has in the last few tracks, which I really love. But outside of that, there's nothing here that we haven't heard on the rest of the album. As a matter of fact, it just comes off more faceless, more recycled. So overall, I was let down by this, but I do still think that this is probably the best thing that Methyl Ethel has put out so far. Like, they are really working with some great grooves, some great funk. I like the haunting aspect of this album a lot. I think Jake's performances are really getting there. All the pieces are in place, but I just feel like they need a little bit more time, maybe another album to assemble them the right way. Until then, I'm feeling a decent 6 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you guys would like for me to chat about in the future. Until next time, have a great day, guys.